Indonesia. The name carries weight, but few can place it on a map with confidence. It is not a single island, it is not a city. It is a nation of more than 17,000 islands, scattered across an ocean wider than the continental United States. From the westernmost tip of Sumatra to the eastern edge of Papua, Indonesia spans 3 time zones and sits at the crossroads of continents. It is the 4th most populous country on Earth, home to over 270 million people. And yet, to much of the world, it remains a mystery. The islands rest on some of the most volatile ground on the planet. Beneath them, tectonic plates grind and collide. Volcanoes rise from the sea. Earthquakes split the land. Tsunamis reshape coastlines in minutes. This is the Ring of Fire, and Indonesia burns at its heart. Over 130 active volcanoes punctuate the landscape, more than any other nation. Some erupt quietly. Others have altered global climates and rewritten history. But Indonesia is not defined by disaster alone. It is also one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. Rainforests older than the Amazon blanket its western islands. Coral reefs teem with life in waters so clear they seem unreal. Species found nowhere else on the planet thrive here. Orangutans in Borneo, Komodo dragons on a handful of islands, birds of paradise in the highlands of Papua. The land is lush, fertile, and relentlessly alive. And then there is the human story. Indonesia is a patchwork of cultures, languages, and histories. Over 700 languages are spoken across its islands. Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, and Christians have all left their mark. Empires rose and fell here long before Europeans arrived. The spice trade made these islands the center of the world. Colonization tried to break them. Independence forged them into something new. To understand Indonesia is to understand a paradox. It is fragmented, yet unified. Ancient, yet modern. Beautiful, yet brutal. It is a nation still taking shape, still being carved by forces beyond human control. The earth is restless here. The forests are vanishing. The seas are rising. And yet, life persists, adapts, and thrives. This is Indonesia, where the earth is still deciding what it wants to be. I am Robert Beckham, and you are watching Earth Wonders. Indonesia, with its more than 17,000 islands, form the largest archipelago on Earth, stretching over 5,000 kilometers from east to west. To fly over Indonesia is to see a world broken into pieces, scattered across an ocean that seems to have no end. The 5 main islands, Sumatra, Java, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and Papua, are themselves vast. Java alone is home to more than 140 million people, making it the most populous island in the world. Sumatra is larger than California. Papua, the western half of New Guinea, is a wilderness of mountains and rainforest where isolated tribes still live beyond the reach of modern states. These islands are not small fragments, they are worlds unto themselves. But the vast majority of Indonesia's islands are uninhabited. Some have never been named. Others are home to a single village, a lighthouse, or nothing at all. The sea between them is not empty. Fishermen know every current, every reef, every place where the water turns deep. But to outsiders, the archipelago can feel endless, impossible to grasp. It is a nation defined not by borders on land, but by the ocean itself. The geography is chaotic. There is no single mountain range, no central river system, no unifying landmass. Instead, Indonesia is a collision of fragments, pieces of continents that drifted together over millions of years. Sumatra and Java sit on the edge of the Asian continental shelf. The islands are not arranged in neat rows. They spiral, overlap, and scatter in patterns that make no sense until you see them from space. This fragmentation is not just geological. It is political, cultural, and linguistic. For most of history, there was no Indonesia. There were kingdoms, sultanates, and trading ports, each with its own language and customs. The idea of a unified nation did not exist until the 20th century, when colonialism forced these islands into a single administrative unit. Even then, unity was a choice, not a given. When independence came in 1945, the question was not whether Indonesia could exist, but whether it should. The answer came in the form of a motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity in diversity. It is printed on the national emblem, spoken in schools, and invoked in speeches. But it is more than a slogan. It is a necessity. Without it, Indonesia would splinter into dozens of separate nations, each island drifting back into its own orbit. The archipelago holds together not because geography demands it, but because people decided it must. Travel between the islands is a daily challenge. Ferries cross narrow straits. Cargo ships navigate treacherous currents. Small planes hop from airstrip to airstrip, landing on runways carved into hillsides or perched on coral atolls. In some regions, roads connect villages. In others, rivers are the only highways. On the outer islands, isolation is the norm. News travels slowly, supply chains break down, government presence is minimal. And yet, life continues. Fishermen cast nets in the same waters their ancestors fished. Farmers tend rice paddies on terraces built centuries ago. Children grow up speaking languages that exist nowhere else. The archipelago is not a problem to be solved. It is simply the way things are. From above, Indonesia looks fragile, a scattering of green against blue, vulnerable to storms, rising seas, and shifting plates. But up close, it is anything but fragile. The islands are alive, restless, and endlessly complex. They do not sit still. They never have. The earth beneath Indonesia is not stable. It never has been. The islands sit at the meeting point of four major tectonic plates: the Eurasian, Indo-Australian, Pacific, and Philippine Sea plates. These massive slabs of crust grind against each other constantly, pushing, pulling, and colliding in slow motion. The result is one of the most geologically active regions on the planet. Earthquakes are routine. Volcanoes dominate the skyline. The ground itself is in motion. Over 130 volcanoes are classified as active in Indonesia. That is more than any other country. Some are quiet, venting steam and sulfur into the air. Others erupt regularly, spilling lava down their slopes and burying villages in ash. A few have erupted with such force that they changed the course of human history. This is not ancient geology. This is happening now. The volcanoes follow a clear pattern. They arc along the southern edge of Sumatra and Java, then curve northward through the Lesser Sunda Islands and into the Banda Sea. This volcanic belt is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a horseshoe of seismic activity that encircles the Pacific Ocean. But Indonesia is not just on the Ring of Fire. It is one of its most violent sections. The cause is subduction. The Indo-Australian plate is sliding beneath the Eurasian plate, diving into the mantle at a rate of about 7 centimeters per year. As it descends, it melts. The molten rock rises, forcing its way through cracks in the crust. When it reaches the surface, it erupts. This process has been going on for millions of years. It will continue for millions more. The volcanoes are not evenly spaced. Some islands have none. Others are dominated by a single peak. Java has more than 30 active volcanoes, including Merapi, one of the most dangerous in the world. Merapi erupts every few years, sending pyroclastic flows, superheated clouds of gas and rock, racing down its slopes at speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour. Villages have been rebuilt in its shadow again and again. People do not leave. They cannot. The reason is the soil. Volcanic ash is incredibly fertile. When it weathers, it breaks down into nutrients that crops need. Rice grows thick and green on the slopes of volcanoes. Coffee thrives at higher elevations. Farmers in Java have learned to live with the risk because the alternative is hunger. The same mountains that threaten them also feed them. It is a bargain written in ash and stone. Not all eruptions are predictable. In 1815, Mount Tambora on the island of Sumbawa exploded with a force that dwarfed anything in recorded history. The eruption ejected so much ash and sulfur into the atmosphere that it blocked sunlight across the globe. Temperatures dropped. Crops failed. 1816 became known as the year without a summer. Tens of thousands died in Indonesia. Famines spread across Europe and North America. The eruption did not just reshape the island, it reshaped the world. Krakatoa in the Sunda Strait between Java and Sumatra erupted in 1883 with similar violence. The explosion was heard 4,800 kilometers away. Tsunamis generated by the collapse of the volcanic island killed more than 36,000 people. Ash circled the planet, turning sunsets blood red for months. The island itself was obliterated, leaving only a submerged caldera. But the story did not end there. In 1927, a new volcano began to rise from the sea. Anak Krakatoa, child of Krakatoa, continues to grow. It erupts regularly, reminding the world that the fire beneath has not gone out. Earthquakes are just as common. The same tectonic forces that create volcanoes also generate seismic waves. Most are small, tremors that rattle windows and wake light sleepers. But every few years, a major quake strikes. Buildings collapse, roads split, coastlines drop by meters. In 2004, a magnitude 9.1 earthquake off the coast of Sumatra triggered a tsunami that killed more than 230,000 people across the Indian Ocean. It was one of the deadliest natural disasters in human history. Indonesia absorbed the brunt of it. Living on the Ring of Fire is not a choice. It is geography. The islands exist because of the fire. The mountains, the soil, the land itself, all of it is born from violence. The people who live here do not ignore the danger. They simply accept it as part of a landscape. They build earthquake-resistant homes. They watch the volcanoes. They listen for the low rumble that signals something is wrong. The earth beneath Indonesia is never still. It shifts, melts, and explodes. It creates and destroys in equal measure. And yet, life flourishes. The volcanoes that bury villages also feed them. The earthquakes that shatter cities also remind people that the ground they stand on is borrowed, not owned. This is the bargain of living on the Ring of Fire. The earth gives, and the earth takes away. The western islands of Indonesia, Sumatra, Kalimantan, and parts of Sulawesi, are blanketed in rainforest. Not the kind planted in recent decades, but ancient forests that have existed for tens of millions of years. These are some of the oldest and most biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. They predate the Amazon. They survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and the rise and fall of entire species. They are still here, though diminished, scarred, and under siege. The rainforest does not announce itself gently. It is dense, humid, and overwhelming. The canopy towers 40 meters above the ground, blocking most of the sunlight. Below, The understory is a tangle of vines, ferns, and saplings competing for scraps of light. The air is thick with moisture. Rain falls almost daily, sometimes in sudden torrents that turn trails into rivers. The ground is soft, layered with decades of leaf litter. Roots snake across the surface, anchoring trees that seem too tall to stand. The biodiversity here is staggering. The Sumatran tiger is critically endangered, with fewer than 400 individuals left in the wild. The Sumatran rhinoceros is even closer to extinction, numbering fewer than 80. These are not abstract statistics. They are species on the edge of disappearing forever. Orangutans are the icons of Borneo and Sumatra. The name means person of the forest in Malay, and it fits. They are solitary, intelligent, and slow-moving, spending most of their lives in the trees. Males can weigh over 100 kilograms and have arm spans of more than 2 meters. They use tools, build nests, and communicate through gestures and calls. But their habitat is shrinking. Logging, agriculture, and fires have destroyed more than half of their forest home in the last 50 years. What remains is fragmented, isolated, and under constant pressure. Borneo is the third largest island in the world, and much of it is still forested. But forested is a relative term. Large sections have been cleared for palm oil plantations, a crop that has transformed the landscape. Palm oil is in everything: food, cosmetics, fuel. It is profitable, efficient, and devastating. Monoculture plantations replace complex ecosystems. Species that depend on the forest have nowhere to go. The soil erodes, rivers silt up. The forest does not regenerate. The Komodo dragon, the world's largest lizard, lives on a handful of islands in the Lesser Sundas. It is a relic of a time when giant reptiles roamed the earth. Adults can grow to 3 meters in length and weigh over 70 kilograms. They are ambush predators, using venom and bacteria-laden bites to bring down prey. They eat deer, pigs, and occasionally each other. They are found nowhere else, and their habitat is vanishing. Tourism has brought attention and funding, but it has also brought pressure. The dragons are protected, but the islands they live on are fragile. Papua, the eastern half of New Guinea, is a different kind of wilderness. The island is covered in mountains, some reaching over 4,000 meters. The highlands are cool, wet, and remote. Tribes live in valleys cut off from the rest of the world, speaking languages unrelated to any other. Explorers only reached some of these areas in the 20th century. Even today, vast sections of Papua remain unmapped and unexplored. The biodiversity is extraordinary. Birds of paradise, tree kangaroos, and species of plants that science has yet to catalog. But Papua is changing. Roads are being pushed into the interior. Logging companies are moving in. Mining operations are carving into the mountains. The Indonesian government views Papua as a frontier, a place to develop and integrate. The indigenous people see it differently. For them, the forest is not a resource. It is home. Deforestation in Indonesia is among the fastest in the world. Satellite images show the damage in stark terms: green turning to brown, forests replaced by neat rows of palms, or bare earth. Some of the fires are accidental. Many are not. Burning is the cheapest way to clear land. The smoke drifts across borders, choking cities in Malaysia and Singapore. The haze can last for weeks, grounding flights and sending thousands to hospitals. The forests burn, and the world breathes the smoke. Conservation efforts exist, but they are underfunded and overwhelmed. National parks offer some protection, but enforcement is weak. Illegal logging continues. Poaching persists. The economic pressures are immense. Palm oil, timber, and mining generate jobs and revenue. For a developing nation, the choice between conservation and development is not simple. The rainforests of Indonesia are not silent. They hum with life. Cicadas drone in the afternoon heat. Gibbons call at dawn, their songs echoing through the canopy. Hornbills flap overhead, their wing beats audible from the ground. But the forests are quieter than they used to be. Species are disappearing faster than they can be studied. Ecosystems are unraveling. What remains is precious, irreplaceable, and slipping away. In the 19th century, a British naturalist named Alfred Russel Wallace traveled through the Malay archipelago, collecting specimens and mapping the natural world. He noticed something strange. The islands of Bali and Lombok are separated by a strait less than 40 kilometers wide. But the wildlife on each side is completely different. Bali has monkeys, tigers, and Asian birds. Lombok has cockatoos, marsupials, and Australian species. The divide is sharp, invisible, and absolute. The Wallace Line is not just a curiosity. It is one of the most significant biogeographical boundaries on Earth. It marks the edge of two ancient worlds, Asia and Australia. Species on the western side evolved in tropical Asian forests. Those on the eastern side descended from Australian ancestors. The result is a natural experiment played out over millions of years. The difference is visible to anyone who looks. West of the line, the forests are filled with primates, macaques, langurs, gibbons. East of the line, there are none. Instead, there are marsupials, like couscouses, tree-dwelling mammals with prehensile tails. Birds follow the same pattern. West of the line, barbets and hornbills dominate. East of the line, cockatoos and lorikeets take over. The shift is not gradual, it is sudden, as if someone drew a border and told the animals not to cross. Sulawesi sits directly on the line, and its wildlife reflects that. The island is a strange mix of Asian and Australian species, along with creatures found nowhere else. The babirusa, a type of wild pig with tusks that curve backward through its snout, lives only on Sulawesi. The anoa, a small buffalo, is another endemic species. The island's isolation allowed evolution to experiment in ways that would not have been possible elsewhere. Wallace himself was fascinated by the implications. He saw the line as evidence that species did not appear fully formed. They evolved, adapted, and changed over time. His observations in Indonesia helped him develop a theory of natural selection, which he published alongside Charles Darwin. The Wallace Line became proof that geography shapes life, that barriers matter, and that evolution is not a global process, but a local one. The line is not perfectly sharp in practice. Some species have managed to cross. Birds, being mobile, are less constrained. Ocean currents occasionally carry seeds or rafts of vegetation from one side to the other. But for most terrestrial animals, the boundary holds. Millions of years of separation cannot be undone by a few lucky crossings. Modern science has refined Wallace's line. Researchers now recognize a transitional zone called Wallacea between the Asian and Australian shelves. This zone includes Sulawesi, the Lesser Sunda Islands, and the Moluccas. It is a region where both influences mix, creating ecosystems unlike anywhere else. Wallacea is a biodiversity hotspot, home to thousands of species found nowhere else on Earth. But it is also under threat. Deforestation, hunting, and habitat loss are eroding the uniqueness of Wallacea. Species that survived millions of years of isolation are now facing extinction within decades. The Wallace Line is still visible in the distribution of wildlife, but it is fading. Forests are being cleared on both sides. The boundary that once seemed absolute is becoming irrelevant. Wallace's journey through Indonesia changed how we understand the natural world. He showed that geography is not just a backdrop, it is a force that shapes life itself. The line he drew still matters, not as a fixed border, but as a reminder that evolution is local, that isolation creates diversity, and that the barriers we see on a map have deep roots in time. The animals on either side of the Wallace line do not know they are different. They simply live where they evolved to live. But for humans, the line is a lesson. It shows that the world is not uniform. It is fractured, divided, and endlessly varied. And Indonesia, sitting on that fracture, is where two worlds meet. Long before the name Indonesia existed, the islands were home to kingdoms and empires that rivaled anything in Europe or Asia. These were not isolated villages or tribal confederations. They were sophisticated states with vast fleets, monumental architecture, and influence that stretched across continents. The spice trade made them rich. Religion gave them purpose. And then, slowly, they faded. The earliest evidence of organized power in Indonesia comes from the Srivijaya Empire, which controlled the Strait of Malacca and much of Sumatra from the 7th to the 13th century. Srivijaya was a maritime empire, built not on land conquest, but on control of trade routes. Ships from China, India, and the Middle East had to pass through the strait. Srivijaya collected tribute, provided protection, and grew wealthy. Buddhist monks traveled to its capital to study. Chinese records describe it as a center of learning and commerce. Java, by contrast, built in stone. In the 8th and 9th centuries, the Sailendra dynasty constructed Borobudur, one of the largest Buddhist monuments in the world. It is a massive stepped pyramid rising 35 meters above the surrounding plains. The structure contains over 500 statues of the Buddha and 2,600 relief panels depicting stories from Buddhist scriptures. Pilgrims once walked the terraces in a spiraling path, moving from the earthly realm to enlightenment. The monument was abandoned in the 14th century, buried under volcanic ash and jungle growth. It was rediscovered in the 19th century, cleared and restored. Today, it stands as a reminder of a lost world. Hinduism also left its mark. The Prambanan temple complex, built in the 9th century, rivals Borobudur in scale and ambition. It is dedicated to the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The central temple towers 47 meters high, covered in intricate carvings depicting scenes from the Ramayana. The complex once included over 200 smaller temples, most of which have crumbled. Earthquakes have repeatedly damaged the site, but it has been rebuilt each time. Prambanan is proof that Hinduism was not a foreign import. It was woven into the fabric of Javanese society. Islam arrived in Indonesia gradually, carried by traders rather than armies. Arab and Persian merchants had been visiting the islands for centuries, but conversion did not begin in earnest until the 13th century. The process was slow and uneven. Coastal cities adopted Islam first, drawn by trade connections with the Muslim world. Inland kingdoms resisted longer, clinging to Hindu-Buddhist traditions. But over time, Islam became dominant. By the 16th century, most of Sumatra, Java, and the eastern islands were Muslim. Hindu culture survived only on Bali, where it remains the majority religion today. The spice trade was the engine that powered these kingdoms. Cloves, nutmeg, and mace grew only in the Moluccas, a small group of islands in eastern Indonesia. These spices were worth more than gold in Europe. Arab traders controlled the early trade, but European powers soon followed. The Portuguese arrived in the 16th century, followed by the Spanish, English, and Dutch. They did not come to trade peacefully. They came to conquer. The Dutch East India Company, established in 1602, was not a government, but a corporation with its own army and navy. It forced local rulers into unequal treaties, seized control of spice production, and violently suppressed resistance. Villages that refused to cooperate were burned. Entire populations were displaced. The Dutch did not colonize Indonesia to spread civilization. They came for profit, and they extracted it ruthlessly. For 3.5 centuries, the Dutch ruled Indonesia. They built plantations, exploited labor, and reshaped the economy to serve European markets. The islands became known as the Dutch East Indies. The cultures, languages, and histories that existed before were dismissed as primitive. The great kingdoms of Java and Sumatra were reduced to footnotes in colonial records. But the past did not disappear. Borobudur still stands. Prambanan still rises from the plains. These monuments are not just relics. They are proof that Indonesia was never a blank slate waiting to be written on. It had its own empires, its own art, its own ideas about power and the divine. The kingdoms may be lost, but their echoes remain. On August 27, 1883, the island of Krakatoa exploded. The sound was heard in Perth, Australia, over 3,000 kilometers away. It was heard in Mauritius, 4,800 kilometers to the west. Some reports claim it was the loudest sound in recorded history. The eruption did not build slowly. It detonated. 4 massive explosions ripped the island apart over the course of a single day. The final blast ejected 25 cubic kilometers of rock, ash, and pumice into the atmosphere. The island collapsed into the sea, leaving an underwater caldera 250 meters deep. The explosion was catastrophic, but it was the aftermath that killed. The collapse of the island displaced an enormous volume of water. Tsunamis radiated outward in all directions. Waves over 40 meters high struck the coasts of Java and Sumatra, obliterating everything in their path. Entire towns vanished. Ships were carried kilometers inland. The official death toll was 36,417, though the true number is likely higher. Bodies washed ashore for weeks. Krakatoa was not the first massive eruption in Indonesia, and it would not be the last. But it was the first to be documented in real time by a global network of observers. Telegraph lines carried news of the disaster within hours. Newspapers published accounts from survivors. Scientists analyzed the ash that fell on ships thousands of kilometers away. Krakatoa became a symbol of nature's power, a reminder that the Earth could reshape itself without warning. The island that exploded was not uninhabited. A small community lived on its slopes, tending gardens and fishing the surrounding waters. They died in the first hours. But Krakatoa had been active long before humans arrived. Ancient eruptions built the island over millennia. Javanese records describe eruptions in the 5th and 16th centuries. The 1883 event was simply the most recent and the most violent. After the explosion, the sea reclaimed the caldera. For decades, nothing grew. The water was too deep, the remnants of the island too unstable. But volcanic activity did not stop. Magma continued to rise from the mantle, seeking a way out. In 1927, fishermen reported steam and ash rising from the sea. A new island was forming. They called it Anak Krakatoa, child of Krakatoa. Anak Krakatoa grew quickly. By the 1950s, it had risen above sea level. By the 1990s, it stood over 300 meters tall. The island was a perfect cone, smoking gently but steadily. Tourists visited. Scientists monitored it. The volcano became a symbol of regeneration, proof that even total destruction could give birth to something new. But Anak Krakatoa was never stable. In December 2018, a section of the volcano collapsed into the sea during an eruption. The collapse triggered another tsunami, smaller than the 1883 event, but still deadly. Waves struck the coasts of Java and Sumatra without warning, killing over 400 people. The island lost half its height in a matter of minutes. What had taken decades to build was gone in seconds. The eruption was a reminder that Krakatoa is not finished. It continues to grow, continues to erupt, and continues to threaten the surrounding coasts. Monitoring stations track its activity. Warning systems have been improved. But the fundamental problem remains. The volcano sits in one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, surrounded by densely populated coastlines. When it erupts again, and it will, people will be in the way. Krakatoa's legacy is not just destruction. The 1883 eruption changed how scientists understood volcanoes. It provided data on eruption dynamics, atmospheric effects, and tsunami generation. It showed that volcanic events could have global consequences. And it demonstrated that the Earth's interior is far more violent than anyone had imagined. The islands around Krakatoa are green again. Coral reefs have regrown. Fish have returned. Life does not wait for permission. It adapts, colonizes, and moves on. But beneath the surface, the magma is still there, still rising, still building pressure. Krakatoa is not a relic of the past. It is an active threat, a volcano still in its infancy. The shadow it casts is not just historical. It is present, lingering over every ship that passes through the Sunda Strait. The people who live on the coasts nearby know the risk. They have heard the stories. They have seen the memorials. But they do not leave. The sea provides fish. The land provides crops. Life continues in the shadow of Krakatoa, just as it continued after the 1883 eruption, and just as it will continue after the next one. The Java Sea is not deep. Most of it sits on a submerged continental shelf, averaging only 46 meters in depth. During the last ice age, when sea levels were over 100 meters lower, the sea did not exist. What is now ocean was a vast plain connecting Java, Sumatra, and Borneo to mainland Asia. Animals migrated freely. Humans walked from one island to another. Then, the ice melted, the waters rose, and the plain became a sea. Today, the Java Sea is one of the busiest maritime zones on the planet. It sits at the crossroads of global shipping routes connecting the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. Cargo ships, oil tankers, and fishing vessels share the water. Ports line the coasts, Jakarta, Surabaya, Semarang. The sea is shallow enough that anchoring is easy, but deep enough that large ships can navigate without running aground. It is a natural highway, and it has been for centuries. Fishing is the lifeblood of the Java Sea today. Millions of people depend on it for food and income. The waters are rich in species: tuna, mackerel, squid, shrimp. Small boats work the shallows, casting nets by hand. Larger trawlers drag the bottom, scooping up everything in their path. The competition is fierce. Overfishing is widespread. Stocks that were once abundant are now depleted. Fishermen have to go farther, stay out longer, and catch less. Coral reefs fringe many of the islands in the Java Sea. These reefs are biodiversity hotspots, home to thousands of species. But they are fragile. Rising sea temperatures cause coral bleaching. Pollution from rivers smothers reefs in silt. Dynamite fishing, illegal but still common, blows apart entire reef systems. The damage is cumulative and largely irreversible. Reefs that took thousands of years to grow can be destroyed in an afternoon. The sea itself is changing. Plastic waste drifts in the currents, tangling in nets and washing ashore on remote beaches. Oil spills from tankers and drilling platforms coat the water. Coastal development has destroyed mangroves, which once acted as buffers against storms and nurseries for fish. The Java Sea is under pressure from every direction: overfishing, pollution, shipping, and climate change. And yet, it remains vital. The sea feeds millions. It connects islands that would otherwise be isolated. It carries goods that fuel economies. The Java Sea is not pristine, and it has not been for centuries. But it is still alive, still productive, and still central to the lives of those who depend on it. Fishermen leave port before dawn, their boats cutting through calm water. They know the tides, the currents, and the places where fish gather. They have fished these waters for generations. Their fathers fished here, their children will too. The Java Sea is not just a body of water. It is a way of life, a livelihood, and a legacy. It is crowded, polluted, and overused, but it endures. Indonesia is home to over 700 languages. That is not an estimate. It is a count based on linguistic surveys and field research. Some languages are spoken by millions. Others are spoken by a few hundred people in a single valley. The diversity is staggering. It is also fragile. Many languages are disappearing as younger generations shift to Indonesian, the national language, or to regional lingua francas like Javanese. The linguistic diversity reflects a deeper truth. Indonesia is not a single culture. It is a patchwork of cultures, each with its own history, traditions, and identity. The Javanese, who make up 40% of the population, have a complex social hierarchy and a rich tradition of performing arts. The Sundanese, from West Java, are known for their music and agriculture. The Balinese have preserved Hindu culture in a way that exists nowhere else. The Minangkabau of West Sumatra are matrilineal, passing inheritance through the female line. The Dayak of Borneo are split into dozens of subgroups, each with its own customs. The list goes on. Unity in this context is not natural. It is constructed. The concept of Indonesia as a single nation did not exist until the 20th century. For most of history, the islands were divided into kingdoms, sultanates, and tribal territories. People identified with their village, their ethnic group, or their ruler, not with a nation. The idea of Indonesia was born out of shared opposition to Dutch colonialism. It was a political project, not a cultural given. The Dutch East Indies, as the colony was called, encompassed roughly the same territory as modern Indonesia, but the Dutch ruled indirectly, through local elites. They did not try to unify the islands culturally. They did not even teach the local population Dutch in any systematic way. The colony was a collection of separate territories, each governed according to local customs and colonial convenience. The idea of a unified Indonesia emerged not from the colonial administration, but from the colonized. In 1928, a group of young activists gathered in Jakarta and issued the Youth Pledge. It was a declaration of intent. One nation, one language, one people. The language they chose was Malay, a trade language spoken across the archipelago, but native to no single ethnic group. It was a compromise, a language that belonged to everyone and no one. Renamed Indonesian, it became the language of independence, education, and national identity. The independence movement was long and brutal. The Japanese occupation during World War II temporarily displaced the Dutch, but it brought its own horrors: forced labor, famine, and violence. When the war ended in 1945, Indonesian nationalists declared independence. The Dutch tried to reassert control, leading to 4 years of armed conflict. International pressure eventually forced the Dutch to recognize Indonesian sovereignty in 1949. The new nation was born, but it was far from stable. Holding Indonesia together required force as much as ideology. Regional rebellions broke out in Sumatra, Sulawesi, and the Moluccas. Some groups wanted independence, others wanted greater autonomy. The central government, based in Jakarta, responded with military force. The rebellions were suppressed, but the underlying tensions never disappeared. Even today, separatist movements persist in Papua and, until recently, in Aceh. Religion adds another layer of complexity. Indonesia is the world's largest Muslim-majority country, with over 85% of the population identifying as Muslim. But Islam in Indonesia is not monolithic. On Java, it blends with older Hindu-Buddhist traditions. In Aceh, it is stricter, more conservative. In other regions, Christianity is dominant, particularly in Papua, North Sulawesi, and parts of the Moluccas. Bali remains predominantly Hindu. Traditional animist beliefs persist in remote areas. Religious tensions have occasionally erupted into violence. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, conflicts between Christians and Muslims in the Moluccas killed thousands. Bombings by extremist groups targeted nightclubs, hotels, and churches. The government cracked down, but the threat has not disappeared entirely. Most Indonesians, however, practice a moderate form of Islam that emphasizes tolerance and coexistence. The national motto, Unity and Diversity, is not just a slogan, it is a daily negotiation. Cultural traditions vary wildly from island to island. In Bali, daily offerings of flowers and incense are placed outside homes and shops. In Java, shadow puppet performances tell stories from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. In Sumatra, elaborate wedding ceremonies can last for days. In Papua, tribal dances and feathered headdresses are still part of important rituals. These traditions are not museum pieces. They are living practices passed down through generations. But modernization is changing everything. Young people move to cities for work. Television and the internet bring global culture into remote villages. Traditional crafts are being replaced by factory-made goods. Languages are dying as children grow up speaking Indonesian instead of their parents' tongue. The diversity that defines Indonesia is under pressure, not from colonialism or conflict, but from the slow, relentless pull of the modern world. Indonesia is a nation of contradictions. It is unified, yet fragmented, modern, yet traditional, secular, yet deeply religious. The cultures have collided, blended, and adapted. What has emerged is something unique, a country that contains multitudes, where difference is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be managed. It is not always peaceful, it is not always fair, but it holds together year after year against the odds. Jakarta is sinking, not metaphorically, literally. The city is subsiding at a rate of up to 25 centimeters per year in some areas, making it one of the fastest sinking cities in the world. The ground is collapsing beneath the streets, buildings, and homes of over 10 million people. By 2050, much of northern Jakarta could be underwater. This is not a distant threat. It is happening now. The cause is groundwater extraction. Jakarta sits on a low-lying coastal plain, much of it below sea level. Fresh water is scarce. The rivers are polluted. Piped water reaches only a fraction of the population. So people drill wells. Homes, businesses, and factories pump water from underground aquifers. When the water is removed, the ground compacts. The city sinks. The problem is visible everywhere. Roads buckle and crack, buildings tilt at odd angles. Floodwalls that once stood above the high tide line are now submerged. During the rainy season, parts of the city flood regularly. Water pours through the streets, overwhelming drains and seeping into homes. The floods are not just from rivers. They are from the sea, which is reclaiming land that was dry just decades ago. Jakarta is not alone in facing this problem, but it is facing it faster than almost anywhere else. The combination of subsidence, rising sea levels, and inadequate infrastructure is catastrophic. Efforts to address the issue have been slow and ineffective. Building a seawall would buy time, but it would not stop the subsidence. Limiting groundwater extraction is politically difficult. People need water, and providing alternatives is expensive. In 2019, the Indonesian government announced a radical solution: move the capital. The new capital, named Nusantara, will be built on the island of Borneo, over 1,000 kilometers away. The plan is ambitious. The new city will be designed from scratch with modern infrastructure, sustainable planning, and space for up to 1.5 million people. Construction has already begun, though progress has been slow. The target completion date is 2045, the centennial of Indonesian independence. But Jakarta is different. It is not just the political capital, it is the economic, cultural, and social center of Indonesia. Over 30 million people live in the greater Jakarta area. It generates 17% of the country's GDP. Moving the government will not change that. Jakarta will remain a megacity, sinking or not. The decision to move has been controversial. Critics argue that the money would be better spent fixing Jakarta, improving water infrastructure, enforcing regulations on groundwater use, and building flood defenses. Others point out that Borneo is one of the last large areas of rainforest in Indonesia. Building a new city there will require massive deforestation. The environmental cost is enormous. Supporters of the move argue that Jakarta is beyond saving. The subsidence is too severe, the population too large, the infrastructure too outdated. Moving the capital to Borneo would relieve pressure on Java, which holds 60% of Indonesia's population on just 7% of its land. It would also stimulate development in the outer islands, which have long felt neglected by the central government. But the move will not solve Jakarta's problems. The city will still be there, still sinking, still flooded. The people who live there will not be relocated. The government may move to Nusantara, but Jakarta's slums, markets, and factories will remain. The city has a momentum of its own, built over centuries. It will not simply stop because the politicians leave. Jakarta began as a small port called Sunda Kelapa, controlled by the Sundanese kingdom of Pajajaran. The Dutch captured it in 1619 and renamed it Batavia. They built canals, fortifications, and administrative buildings. The city became the center of the Dutch East Indies, a hub of trade and colonial power. After independence, Batavia became Jakarta, and the city exploded in size. Rural migrants flooded in, seeking work and opportunity. The population grew faster than the infrastructure could handle. Today, Jakarta is chaotic, congested, and relentlessly alive. Traffic is legendary. Commutes of 2 hours or more are common. Street vendors sell food on every corner. Skyscrapers rise next to kampongs, informal settlements where houses are built from scrap materials and stacked on top of each other. The divide between rich and poor is stark. Luxury malls sell designer goods while a few blocks away, families live without running water. The city is also resilient. Jakartans have adapted to the flooding, the traffic, and the pollution. They know which streets flood first. They know the shortcuts. They know how to live in a city that is falling apart and rebuilding itself at the same time. Jakarta is messy, dysfunctional, and impossible to ignore. It is Indonesia in concentrated form, everything that makes the country vibrant, frustrating, and endlessly complex. The future of Jakarta is uncertain. The government will move. The city will continue to sink. The floods will get worse. But Jakarta will not disappear. It will adapt, as it always has. The people who live there have no choice but to stay. This is their home. Sinking or not, it is where they belong. Indonesia does not sit still. The earth beneath it shifts constantly, building mountains and tearing islands apart. The forests grow and burn. The seas rise and fall. This is not a land that has reached equilibrium. It is still becoming. For thousands of years, people have lived on these islands, adapting to volcanoes, earthquakes, and floods. They have built kingdoms, temples, and cities. They have survived colonization, war, and upheaval. They have learned to live with forces beyond their control, tectonic plates that will not stop moving, climates that will not stabilize, and oceans that will not stay in place. The challenges facing Indonesia today are not new. They are the same challenges that have always existed, only accelerated. The forests are disappearing faster. The cities are growing larger. The seas are rising higher. But the fundamental tension remains: how to live on land that refuses to be tamed. Indonesia is often described as a nation of contrasts, ancient and modern, diverse yet unified, fragile but resilient. These are not contradictions, they are conditions. The archipelago has always been this way. It always will be. The story of Indonesia is not one of stability, it is one of adaptation. The people here do not expect the ground to stay still. They do not expect the forest to last forever. They do not expect the seas to remain where they are. They simply live, adjust, and carry on.